Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on what continent you're on. Welcome to the DNA Behavior Using Behavioral Science to Decode People. My name is LeeAnn Morales. I am the Managing Director here at DNA Behavior, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. We're pretty excited about this. Today, we've got a great group of people that will actually be presenting this, with Ryan and I co-hosting the webinar, and then Lisa, who is also manning the chat box. So before we get started, I just want to give you a couple of housekeeping items that are relevant to the webinar. One is we do have the volume muted, and that's because it sometimes creates some noise and audio issues for us. So we do welcome questions. If you notice on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A box, and we really encourage you to log any questions that you have on the webinar or anything that relates to sort of the webinar, any topics, and we can handle those with you individually. And if it's something that we want, really is relevant for everyone, we'll save it to the very end and then cover this on the webinar. And then we do run the webinar typically about 35 to 40 minutes. That's what we're expecting today. And we've got a lot of relevant topics to talk about today. In the agenda here today, we have 3 items, but we really will cover them in depth. And the first one is, what is behavioral science and why does it work? And we'll spend the majority of the time on that. Number 2, optimizing your client experience. We really try to make that sort of a relevant cornerstone of our webinars, are really around how it can impact your organization. And then 3, leveraging DNA insights in your work with business DNA. And I know there are a number of you on the webinar today that have focused on the financial DNA portion of what we do, and we've hosted most of our webinars with that theme in mind. So this one's a little bit different in that we are focused on the business DNA, the workplace insights, which we believe is, we've got a number of ecosystem partners that are working in that area. So we really wanted to share that, with that focus today on the webinar. Also wanted to let everyone know we are live on Facebook. This is our second webinar on Facebook. We're pretty excited about it. Had some great reviews from the last webinar. So we always encourage feedback. And one of the things you'll receive immediately after we complete the webinar is you will get a survey. And we really look at that information. So please, give us objective feedback. We construct our webinars based on that information. So anything that's relevant or you'd like to see in a future webinar, please let us know. And at the end of probably by the end of the day, you will receive the recording, which will have an audio and a visual webinar link, along with a PDF of this presentation. So again, we're excited to have you here. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the webinar. So I mentioned my name is LeeAnn Morales. I have been with DNA Behavior since 2012. And I've had such a passion for human behavior in all of my work, but I was trained as an accountant in my education. And if any of you know, I sort of always tell the story that I wasn't really wired to be an accountant for a couple of obvious reasons, but I spent about 17 years sort of going against the grain. And when I found sort of the human behavior aspect of the work I did, I found it much more satisfying, and that's what really drew me to DNA Behavior. And why we're different, I believe, is we offer this API, this DNA API, insights into plugging it into a platform. And that's really quite inspiring for me. And seeing the number of ecosystem partners sort of sprout up around the world is pretty satisfying for us as a team. And taking the behavior that we've been working on since 2001 and integrating that into a platform is really great to see. So really encourage any feedback that you have, or if you'd like to schedule a call, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on how you can actually set up a call with our team to explore your idea. And with that, I will turn it over to Ryan Scott.
Thanks, LeeAnn. So I lead all the technology and development at DNA. My main focus is aligning behavioral insights that we have to business challenges that our clients raise. So we'll usually work with clients and identify some of the key challenges that they are working on that are more people oriented, and then connecting the dots between how behavioral insights can help solve the problem. A big portion of what we do is educate people on how behavioral science works and why it works. And you know, a lot of there's 200 insights that we have the ability of measuring. So we can pretty much solve or at least predict any pattern or habit that humans have. So a lot of our work is really just educating the public and our clients on that. So if you have any business challenges that you're working through in your business or with your clients, feel free to quiz us. So LeeAnn and I do this every day, so there's probably not a question that we can come up with this group that we haven't heard before, but we would love the challenge. So if you have a question or a challenge that you're trying to solve, just put it in the question box, and we'll be happy to help you with that. So without further ado, I'll hand it back over to LeeAnn, who will further on the discussion of behavioral science.
Thank you, Ryan. So who are we as a business? DNA Behavior, as I mentioned, has been around since 2001. And through that time, we've really perfected not only what we call natural behavior, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the science of what we do, but the problems that we do solve are that intensified behaviors caused by human differences. And you can see there the Harvard research shows that 87% of business issues are communication related, and you can probably all step back and think of a situation that you've had that you were working with a team member or maybe your leader, and you just had some real challenges with that. And believe it or not, you know, we can uncover usually what sort of caused that issue. It usually is related to how you're wired and the way you process information. So that's why we always say that, you know, we solve those problems around those intensified behaviors, because when you're under pressure, you might react differently than you would sort of what we call our learned behavior. So that's really the business that we are in. We're on helping people solve those business issues. And through the API integration, we've been able to do that and really extend the platform really around almost any organization, as I'll point out in the next slide. So with DNA Behavior, you can see here there are 5 icons here. The first one is organization, second one is client facing, third marketing, fourth planning and investing, and then the fifth one is compliance. So within each one of these, there is an element of using the DNA API to solve those business issues. And Ryan will actually explain a little bit more in depth on sort of what each one of those create in the work, but we're going to, again, spend most of the time today talking about organizational development around business DNA, but each one of these do have an element of business DNA related to that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Great. So as LeeAnn was mentioning, our solution is really omni-channel. So what that means is that it spans, you know, pretty much every single department within an organization, and it allows for customized and scalable engagements to happen both online, so digitally and in person. So I'll walk you through some of these as it goes along, but because we're measuring something that's just so core to humans, people, you know, we're able to take the underlying insights that we have and then put them into context of pretty much every single department of an organization. So we'll first start with the organization node, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the work that we do. So we can identify the behavioral insights of all the employees of an organization. We do a lot of work in financial services. And then we can, once we've identified the underlying personality traits of all the employees of an organization, we can start to do some really cool stuff, because we can look at the way that teams are made, what's the makeup of a team, what's the ideal team structure in order to get work done. Big element of that is results and relationships, which LeeAnn will cover in a second in one of our case studies. We do a lot of operations and practice management work. So, you know, back office inner workings. A cool project that we recently worked on a few years ago was a project with a manufacturing firm where they had a lot of return orders coming in, and that team really didn't know how to manage that. So it was all underlying behavioral insights that really led us to the right answer. They had people that really did not like change, and the unpredictable nature of, having a return come in. They had no idea what type of product or what type of solution would be returned, and that uncertainty really caused them a lot of stress. So, identifying that particular piece and aligning people that had that right behavioral trait just completely solved that problem. So it just gives you an idea of what we typically do in order to solve challenges like that. We do a lot of work with other business to business service providers, and they will roll out our solutions to other organizations as well. Jumping forward, we are the only behavioral science firm that focuses on employee behavior and client behavior. The one cool thing that allows us to do is matching. So we can match the right employee to the right client whenever they come in. There's been a research study that Harvard did that said that there is only a 40% chance that if people are naturally or just randomly matched up, that they will be efficient in working together. So our program around that matching technique is really trying to match up people that have similar personality traits. Things just start to gel, move faster, and just become more efficient. With that, the same similar matching technique can happen between advisors or employees and a household. We do a lot of work with family succession, and then also corporate financial wellness. So programs like 401k, retirement plans, helping people with financial literacy, and really tackling this big spending problem that we have in the U.S. right now. From a marketing perspective, we'll cover this on a case study coming up, but we have the ability of segmenting clients based on personality style. So oftentimes that solves a lot of challenges, and we can talk through some of that. If any of you guys have any questions on segmenting clients based on personality, that's a common question that we get, so feel free to pop that into the question box for us. There's some pretty cool innovative stuff that we've been recently doing with artificial intelligence, picking up on people's tones, and their linguistic patterns in order to predict personality without people having to complete the questionnaire. From a planning and investing perspective, that's another one of the habits that we can pick up on. Because we are measuring underlying behaviors of people, or typically how they operate under stress, we can predict how people will operate in a business environment whenever they're managing a big budget, or there's budgetary constraints. People will be stressed, and those stress behaviors will come out. The same happens whenever people are dealing with their personal investments. So if they have, particularly people have spending issues, that can cause a lot of stress for people because they don't have as much money to operate with, and that that in itself causes a lot of stress, and they're not able to see really what that challenge is. So we have a lot of banks and financial services that use our tools in order to tackle that problem. And lastly, we have a compliance product that allows firms from a back office and risk management perspective to just monitor what people are doing. We have the ability of picking up on rogues, which means people that may go AWOL in an organization. That helps with the risk management and some of the security issues that some of our clients deal with. We also deal with a lot of financial services firms that use this for regulatory compliance and risk analysis. So to jump back on the grand kind of view here, this is the full omni-channel solution. If you have any questions about that, just feel free to raise your hand or pop a question into the box. And we'll jump into this slide, which we call this internally as the Iceberg Slide. So essentially what we are doing is we're measuring natural behaviors. That's everything that's below the surface of a person. So that's things that you would not be able to predict if you were just looking at somebody walking across the street or from face value. So we're measuring those stress behaviors. The type of questionnaire design that we have and allows us to pick up on the stress behaviors, and we can pick up on things like learning style, communication style, decision making, leadership traits, as well as people's biases. So as we go through these specifics, you will see kind of how this comes to light. So the current state of behavioral science, so this is really where we're at today. So we have the ability of picking up on 200 different behavioral insights. It spans pretty much every single habit of people. So that really means how people communicate, invest, work, live, make decisions. And we do this, and we build out a complete database of somebody whenever they complete our questionnaire, or whenever we use one of the AI techniques of measuring personality. We build out the complete database of everything that we know about that person. Whenever we allow people to use our API accounts, or whenever they sign up, as they need those insights, they can just draw on that particular insight. So it allows some of our customers just to start small. If they're just solving for one problem today, they may just, request one of the insights from our platform, but they'll always know that, right now there's 199 more to use later down the road. The way that this breaks down is that there is a quick scan option, which allows you to quickly pick up on people's communication style and really how you engage with them. A questionnaire does not need to be completed for this. This is something that we can do with just demographic data. We have a tool called Communication DNA, which fills the full picture of how somebody communicates. So that allows us to do segmenting, matching, custom sales playbooks for particular clients. And then if you want the full picture for how somebody communicates, invests, works, and lives, we'd recommend that they complete natural behavior. So that's our full university validated questionnaire that takes about 10 minutes to complete. And now LeeAnn's going to cover optimizing the client experience.
Thank you, Ryan. And as Ryan mentioned, sort of that client experience, and what we're going to actually focus on now is sort of in the workplace here. You can see that this team here is actually, you can see just having a great discussion, and this is really just understanding the elements of the behavior that helps this team be able to work better together. And with that, you can actually do the quick scan that Ryan mentioned in the first element of that, really understanding people's communication styles, how they can work. And this is pretty easy to identify. It's not going to get the core of who the individual is, but it's going to help identify the best way people can communicate and work together. As you can see here, this is a sort of a brainstorming session here of engaging, sort of through the work. And you can expand that using, whether it's communication DNA or the natural behavior, really around understanding, somebody's, how they work together, how they actually create, as a leader, their needs and wants, and then the solution matching. When you're actually working, like in this team, understanding, two people and how they would work together better, this is sort of the design of that. That flow that Ryan mentioned in that earlier slide around the quick scan, communication DNA, and then natural behavior. At every stage of this team, you can help really get an understanding of how this team can work better together, and then develop solutions that are based on sort of the team and the output that they're trying to create, with their own client experience.
And the way that this really works from a marketing perspective is that we're able to segment clients, and then you can use those insights in order to market to them correctly. So we'll just kind of pause here, and then we're going to tell you a little story that we recently had when we were up at Pittsburgh at a client's event. So we were meeting with IBM. So they had an executive there that was talking to us about his business challenge. So just the same way that I posed at the very beginning of this webinar, what are some of your business challenges? Make sure, you can quiz us or put it into the box. He came up with a pretty good one. He was like, why do my clients decline all of my dinner invites? So he has, a pretty big spend as far as bringing clients to like steak dinners and nice events like that. And he never has a client take him up on that. And that was something that he thought was unusual, or at least troubling, because in his new role of working with IBM, he's working with people that are a little bit more reserved, a little bit more introverted, and everybody's declining his dinner invites. So we started to pick through that. In his previous line of work, he was in a hospitality environment. So he was working with people that tend to be a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more relational. And now that he's marketing towards IT professionals, they have a different personality style. They tend to be a little bit more reserved, and then they feel under pressure whenever they're meeting with salespeople. And we started to pick through that and kind of talk through who his clients are. And that's really how our insights are used, is we help individuals really understand at a core of who their clients are, or who their team is, so that they can help understand what makes them tick. So our API, we have a lot of different insights. One of the insights that we have that's pretty cool is how to market to people from an optimization perspective. We use this terminology, or kind of this overview for this, is not all clients want to go to the Super Bowl. So we have a lot of clients that have, enormous marketing budgets. So this one firm in Pittsburgh, they spend millions of dollars a year on concert and sports game tickets, and they use that as a relationship building mechanism in order to build high net worth accounts. They're not seeing as high of a efficiency or performance from those relationships whenever they take people out to the event. So we worked on this project with them to help them understand really what makes their clients tick and how to optimize it. So we have a little walkthrough that we will give you right now to show you how this works from a behavioral standpoint. So just to give you a look at this firm that we helped, they're pretty large, 52,000 employees. They are in financial services, so their strength is goals-based financial planning. We were particularly working with their wealth management division, so that's all about investing with clients, but really the story that we're telling here will work for any business. And they're leveraging our API in order to do this. So we started to profile particular clients. This is one client just to give you an idea. So her style is an influencer, as we call it. So it's somebody that's a very aggressive investor and a very high risk taker. So our insights will tell us, or the client, how they prefer to be contacted, what the writing style is that they like, the type of the meeting room, the meeting format, and then how to optimize the marketing spend. So you can see here, this particular person likes very short, bulleted text, very fast-paced person that really just wants the high points. The meeting space is boardroom, so pretty formal environment. It really means business, and that helps her kind of get into that mindset that a decision needs to be made, and it's a rather professional setup. Optimal marketing spend for someone like this is going to be the steak dinners, meeting with leaders, sporting events, things that give her the opportunity to meet others and do new experiences. And they don't mind being in, kind of put on the spot with salespeople. They tend to like, being with other leaders and decision makers. To give you an idea of someone that's completely opposite to that style is someone similar to me. So that would be a reflective thinker. So that's someone that's a very cautious investor, very content. This type of person likes to think before they talk or before they act. So they don't like being put on the spot, and they also don't like to be sold to. So they feel that they are being manipulated if there's a salesperson that is right up in their face and asking them questions. So one tip that we always give salespeople when working with introverted clients or accounts is to really understand the fact that they need to think about things before they make a decision. So aiding in that process of guiding them along, giving them all the information and facts in order to help them, through that path, it really helps them. So you can see here, preferred contact method, set up a phone call and then a follow-up. So that just gives an additional point for them to, kind of think about it, a little bit of homework, and then maybe a follow-up email to make sure that they have all their questions answered. So as opposed to the previous one that we're looking at, that's just one touch point. This is two. Preferred writing style is to be very specific and use facts. Meeting space is going to be warm, functional, practical room. They're not going to want too formal. It's more about like the structure and just having a proper setup with this particular person. Meeting format, it's all about having agenda ahead of time. They don't like to be put on the spot. So if they know what's going to be discussed, they can think about it, and they can kind of reflect, and they can be prepared for the meeting. And then this is a really important one for this particular client, which goes back to that story about why do my clients not take me up on dinner invites? Optimal marketing spend for something that's a little bit more reserved and introverted would be, sending them something to know that so that they know that you're there and that you care and you appreciate them, but it's not putting them on the spot or being too formal. So things like meeting in a coffee house, that's very warm and innocent, so to speak. But also we have clients that will use like ebooks, like ebook gift card or a gift card for dinner with these particular clients. It's the same cost as taking them out to dinner directly, but they will just appreciate that thought a little bit more because it's not putting them into the spot and in the environment where they feel like they're being sold to. So hopefully that helps with any marketing questions that you guys have. If you have any specific marketing challenges or plans that you guys need to optimize, make sure to put them in the question box. And next, we will discuss leveraging DNA insights at work. So I will tee this up for LeeAnn, and he will take over from here.
Thank you, Ryan. So before we get into the slide around the human behavior drives people culture, if you'll remember when Ryan showed you the iceberg slide, one of the things that we do here at DNA Behavior is really, for people to really understand their natural and instinctive strengths. And if you think about it, a strength becomes a struggle if it's overplayed. So that's really something that we focus on for an individual. If you really know what your strengths are, recognize that can turn into a struggle if it is overplayed. But that really does drive the people culture. And as Ryan was pointing out in some of the sales techniques that, some of the clients that we work with, why don't clients accept, going to a steak dinner or a Super Bowl, which seems like a great event, but there's a whole segment of the, population that really would not want to do that. They'd rather spend time with their family or, really understanding a much more of an introverted experience. So if you know that, it really helps you sort of tailor the experience for an individual, a client experience, or for even in the employee side, which we'll focus on now, really around how people work better together. You can probably pick up that Ryan and I work very closely together. We worked together for a number of years, but we have definite differences in how we work. And, he's more methodical. He'll think if we need to work on something, giving him plenty of time to prepare for it, delivers a better result. And that's really what we're doing here, because if you understand that, how your team is wired, it definitely can drive the kind of people culture that you're trying to create. And we do know that 87% of those business issues are people related. And if those of you who've ever worked in project management probably know that, it's around people, processing, technology, and rarely is it about the technology. It's usually process or people that sort of create those blockages. So if you can really uncover those and have people in the right roles, you can definitely lead to better results. In this business performance around sales conversions, client engagement, employee retention and productivity, and operational execution, which really are all about people, process, and technology. If you have people in the right roles, they're actually working in their strengths, can lead to better results. There's another, if any of you are familiar with that concept that Bruce Tuckman talked about, team performance around forming, storming, norming, performing. You can lead to that performing with an organization, and I'll get into a case study a little bit later, really around understanding those behavioral strengths of each person, making sure they're focused on the right task. And that's how you actually lead to that business performance, really by creating that element, of understanding the people. It's really more about understanding people before numbers, as we say it. And, one of the questions I always like to ask, did your team achieve your 2019 goals? And if not, if you can reflect on, why it didn't, was it related to one of those elements I talked about, people, process, or technology? And more times than not, it's around the people. And it doesn't mean that you don't have good people, because I'm certain you do in your team, but were they working on the right things? Did they really know what was expected? Those are the things you can really hone in on for the individuals and understand how they can work better together and, really achieve those goals. And we do that, again, going back to the iceberg slide, which I really like that, the way that shows that natural instinctive behavior. And one element of that is, if we're all working in our strengths, and you can see here on the slide that we measure sort of an individual through that natural behavior process around their results and their relationships. And you can always bet that individuals have an element of both, but you're going to lean more towards one than the other. For instance, I'm much more on the result side, and so is Ryan, but we have an element of relational qualities that can actually help us in our work. But our other team members have much more of that relationship sort of propensity to work, and we need that, because if you have on teams, if you actually have more people that are leaning one to the other, you're going to see that in the results. You can see here that in this team, it's a pretty large team. You have 19 individuals that are very relationship focused and 11 that are very results focused. And not without even knowing any members of the team, I can tell you that they lean more towards that relational side. So things that they actually work on, let's say they tee up a project to get done, they're more than likely going to miss some of the key deadlines because they've got this element of that heavy relationship that probably takes a little bit longer to get through things. But on the converse, if you had where 19 were results and 11 were relational, you probably would have a lot of project management going on, but people might not feel heard. They may not feel, valued. There's a lot of things that come along with somebody that's a results-focused team. So it's really finding the balance of that. And it doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship. Most of the times, even for this team here that's more relationship-focused, just understanding that, there are key deliverable dates that need to be made, sort of to get the project done on time. So you can really just understanding the team dynamics in that way around results and relationships, you can really understand how to actually motivate individuals for the better results of the team. And you can see here that, for those of us that we, in our unique styles, people that see the big picture, they want an action plan, they want key points. That's much more of the way I work. I'm an initiator in my profile, so I like that, seeing the big picture, really understanding sort of here are the key points, here's our action plan as we leave the meeting. Where I may not sort of be operating in my zone around visuals, telling stories, providing the logical steps around it. I can think around that, the sequence of that, but it may not be sort of the things that I would convey in a meeting. Or that's where Ryan on our team would be able to do that, or some of the other members on our team being able to tell the story of why we're doing it. And then it makes it much more of a cohesive experience. And then, here on the right-hand side, keep it relaxed, reducing the risk, creating a backup plan. Those that are more relationship focused might need those elements of that. So it keeps everybody sort of in a cohesive manner, and obviously the project's on task and on time and on budget, which is going to be very important. But everybody feels really part of the team, but then also needing facts, preferring specifics and key points. I always say, for me as an initiator, I can go from A to Z very quickly, but there are team members that need B to Y, and they need it in a sequential manner. That's not really something I sort of focus on. I'm thinking about sort of the A to Z points. So you can see here the mixture that each of the team members would need. And quite honestly, it's not difficult to predict this. It really helps to understand what your own need is. That's why we always recommend that, once people go through the discovery process, they understand their strengths, understand what the struggle would be on the other side of that, but how do they actually work together? And in one of the earlier slides, Ryan talked about one of the strengths we have as a company is being able to match people. So you can really help in understanding how people can work better together, just understanding those differences.
And if anybody is interested in knowing these insights for their team, we like to point out on this slide that we have a trial process. So if you would like to take the profile yourself, you would get all the 200 insights for yourself and all of your team members. And if you're interested in the results and relationships metric that we just showed on the previous slide, we have a team report that could be prepared for you in your account. And that would give you that insight. So if you didn't achieve any of some of your goals and you're really wondering why, and you're wondering if what that result and relationship mix looks like in your team, that would be a good option for you.
So now we're going to cover a case study that I actually worked on with one of our consultants. And we've shared it before, but I think it's worthy of talking about with a around the business DNA that results in relationships. And this was an organization that just came off of a ERP implementation, an Oracle ERP implementation, very big project. It changed every element of the accounting and supply chain process at the university, and it supported a number of individuals. As you can see, it's an organization that has 31,000 employees. It has a huge operating budget, so being able to get good reporting out of the system was something that they needed. Well, when we came in, there were 30 team members on this business analytics team, and in this business analytics team, they had a new leader that came in. It was actually the CFO of the organization, who quickly assessed that this team was not productive. They really were not the right people that should be working on this post-Oracle implementation. And quite honestly, in her assessment, she really thought everybody should be let go and they should start new. And she was ready to bring in a team of consultants to help design a new team and bring in new individuals. But one of the leaders on the team that was actually one of the leaders over the group recognized that there was a lot of talent in these 30 individuals, and she wasn't quite ready to let this go. So she asked for a bit of time to be able to assess the team, understanding how they could actually be in the right roles, work on the right elements of work. Prior to that, the team was not getting any reporting. You can imagine for an organization of that size with 31,000 employees, reporting and analytics was quite important. So not having it was setting the organization back, and it was really creating a lot of blockages in the organization. So one of the things that we did as a team was we had everybody go through the process, what we call natural behavior, and in that process, everybody learned whether they were relational or results or what element of that was. We did the group team report and really understood where the strengths of the team were for that. And it was very quick that things started happening in a very positive way around the work that was being done. There were very few changes that had to happen around the organization, around people in different roles, but there were slight things that needed to happen. One of it was just understanding, you're wired for results, you're wired for relationships, and just understanding that created some understanding and eliminated many of the blockages that were keeping the team from operating at capacity. So we started seeing some things happen pretty quickly around the team productivity. There definitely was a 70% team productivity gain. We saw the project efficiency around the organization improving, resulting in, a bottom line savings of about $6 million because they were getting better details, better on supply chain, better on the accounting, being able to, measure that. And the assignment was about a 4-month assignment. But at the end of it, the CFO, and I was actually in the room with her, gave accolades to the team that she really was so surprised that they had been able to change the behavior so quickly. And she was definitely one that said had been proven wrong, that, this was a team and it was very slight changes that needed to happen with the team. And they're huge believers of using this. So as Ryan even mentioned, for your own team, understanding the elements of how relational or results-focused your team is can be quite important. And then finally, the business challenges we do solve around, disengaged employees. You can imagine on that team that I was referring to earlier that, if they had this perception, university-wide that they were not performing, that can create to a lot of disengagement. 40% of those employees in any organization can be disengaged because they're not actively sort of working in their strengths. It's really important that people really understand that. Low employee productivity is a result of that. Team blockages, truly you could just understand if somebody is relational or results, how they can actually eliminate some of those team blockages and, lead to that better result. Low referrals, on the client side, if you have a client in your organization that comes to you and your team seems disengaged, you can imagine that they're not going to refer you to one of their friends or, a business acquaintance. So it really does reduce the number of low referrals, your ability to grow your firm. And then finally, their employee rogue behavior, and Ryan referenced it, knowing what the makeup of your team is, an individual, making sure they're working in their strengths. Because if somebody is not working in their strengths, it can lead to that employee rogue behavior. Recognizing that hopefully there's a good control system in your company, but it can really lead to, that disengagement around and then creating dysfunction around how they work. They don't feel valued as an employee because they're not working in sort of in an optimal environment. So those are the business challenges that we can solve using very simple techniques that I've mentioned. And then finally, sort of since we've been concentrating on the business DNA piece of this, behavioral insights, really understanding those work habits around business and career planning, recruiting for role fit. We have a number of companies that use it for that. Team development, talent development, succession planning, goals 360 process, which we do have. The succession planning, make sure people are really ready to take that next leap to their next role. Developing the corporate culture that you really want, being more proactive instead of the company actually, being created, or the culture being created by more of a dysfunctional environment, actually being very proactive to create the kind of corporate environment that you're really striving for. And then measuring operational risk management, that rogue employee that we mentioned earlier, concentrating on your leadership development. That's one of the things, people are usually the most important part of an organization. It's really important to make sure that you're inspiring your leadership, and the individuals below in that organization that are striving to be leaders in the company. And then around career development, making sure people really understand their strengths as it relates to their role and to the company. These are all things that can be solved using sort of the business DNA insights.
Cool, and we will pause right there. We have a lot of questions that we'll answer. Before we go any further and go into any more content, we're gonna go ahead and answer some questions. So the first one that I got is, introverts never answer my emails, help. So that is a really good question. So first I'll put up a slide where we were talking about marketing to introverts. So it is true that it's very difficult to get a hold of introverts whenever you're marketing to them. If you see on this slide, the preferred contact method, so the proven way to get in front of introverts if you're a salesperson, is phone calls. They do not like to have unanswered calls because they feel like there's maybe something that they're missing. They're very good to get on the phone, but just to have a really quick phone call and then do an email follow-up. So that's the way that you get in front of them, and then follow up with an email with any facts or further reading that you need. So you might want to try that and to do the phone call first and then follow up with your email just to make sure that they'll see it. Also, if there's a missed call, they'll usually look into their inbox in order to see what they may have missed. So that's a really good way of marketing to introverts if you have some as clients. The next question, which I loved, was what insights did you use to market for this webinar? So that one was a really good one. It came from Remington. I appreciate that. That's a good way to quiz us too. So there's a lot of things that we do that are intentional in our branding and our marketing that are behaviorally centric. So I'll give you a few examples in the slides in a second, but in regards to actually marketing to people, we choose the channels that we market this webinar on specific for a behavioral standpoint. So we market this webinar on LinkedIn. And we use LinkedIn because we are trying to go after the lifestyle and goal setting clients on LinkedIn. So we've done a lot of research on who is using LinkedIn, and that's really what our best channel for that particular piece. So if you saw this on LinkedIn, it would be interesting to see if you're more of a lifestyle or goal setter quadrants. The actual post that we put in LinkedIn, it was more of a visual representation, and it had a few facts and specifics that were in the actual description, and that's just to cover more of the styles. Our team sent out specific emails, and we use the preferred writing style of the clients if they previously completed profiles. So if you previously completed a profile, our team would know if you like bullet points or specifics whenever we're writing to you. So our team would have written you in the right manner. A few of you, we followed up with phone calls because that was your preferred style. And we also did some marketing on Instagram. So we intentionally did that from a generational perspective. We see a younger demographic, particularly using Instagram. Because this is an API webinar, some of our prospects from an API perspective are generationally just using Instagram more. So that was an intentional piece there. But I want to show you some specifics that we put in our slides from a branding perspective to show you how we actually do some of this stuff. So like this particular slide, we particularly built as a high level slide for people that are more goal setting. So they like to see the big picture, or lifestyle oriented where they like visuals. We also go after the information style types with this particular slides. These are very fact oriented, and everything is written kind of in a bulleted standpoint, and that helps aid with the goal setters. All of our slides that are on marketing are the intro slides like this one. This is more lifestyle oriented. These are slides that are typically used for salespeople. They tend to be a little more lifestyle oriented, so this would cater to them. And then just as our branding as a whole, if we just take a look at this picture from a high level perspective, every single one of the pictures that we use in all of our marketing, it has people, technology, and you can usually read the personality style of the person based on their face. So that's something that we intentionally do in our branding. We work with a branding consultant in Atlanta that helped us set all this up. So if you look at this picture, if you're looking at the guy that has the sleeves rolled up, he looks a little bit more reflective and kind of questioning. The guy on the right-hand side is very serious, and they're using computers, so technology. So we're providing that, or making people make the connections, allowing them to make the connections between behavior and technology and people. So that's something that we intentionally do. Very good question on that one. We had another really good question about, it was, do you focus on states or traits of individuals, or both? We look at team dynamics. My assumption is that dynamics can change in certain contexts. So yes, that's right. So we're seeing that as well in our work. So different contexts or situations will change the way that people behave. With our particular type of behavior that we're measuring, I'll go back to this slide with the iceberg. We're really measuring things that are below the surface. So it's that stress behavior, or the automatic response that people go to whenever they're under pressure or under stress. So if people aren't under stress or under behavior, they may have more of a neutral behavioral style. But whenever they're going under stress or under pressure, whenever there's crunch time for a project, or if there's budgeting issues, or if their coworkers are stressing them out, they're always going to revert back to that natural behavior. So it is a little bit contextual. And a lot of our team dynamics work is based on that. So if individuals are in a certain work environment that has a certain context, that may play into how the team performs. So hopefully that answers your question on that. We have another good question on how leadership development works, and how our business DNA product would work for that particular context. Do you want to cover that one, LeeAnn?
Sure, happy to. So great question. In the leadership development, you can see here on the iceberg slide that Ryan shows here, we measure that natural and instinctive behavior. So understanding somebody's talent, really that self-understanding of how they're wired, and you can see that, and that's really part of the first phase of that, just understanding, individual, what they're great at, and we can measure those insights, as Ryan mentioned earlier, that, around whether the results or the relational, you can see that, elements of that. And then the second step is really understanding, their leadership, if they're a leader in the company, through a 360 process, which really gets to the top of that. We call it emotional intelligence or learned behavior. That's where everybody on the team would, or that, under his or her sort of leadership, whether it's a subordinate, a peer, or the leader, would rate that person. The person does their own self-assessment as well. And then what comes out of that is a leadership 360 process, which really helps the individual understand if they're really sort of operating in their strengths, what they're great at, what they're not so good at. And it's a true testament to what they see themselves, because many times people overinflate their self-assessment. They may think they're better at something than they really are, or vice versa. They may actually underrate themselves when they're really good at it. So it really gives them a 360-degree process of how they work. And that's really part of the leadership development program here at DNA Behavior, is really around that. And we've got a number of firms that use the program, within their own firms. If you'd like more information, I'm happy to share that with you, and even some of the reports that come out of the system. Happy to do that.
Cool. And just adding on to that particular point, one thing that's really unique about our 360 is a tool that I helped build that's a component of that called the performance index. So if an individual completes a 360 this year, the idea is that their ratings or their overall score will improve the following year. So it's really a process that's typically used year after year. We have a tool or a module within that called the performance index. So based on an individual's responses and the responses of all the raters, we can gauge on a percentage basis, 0 to 100, where that particular person sits this year. And they're given a specific score at the end of the day. The idea is that score will increase year after year so that you can get that pulse check kind of snapshot of where someone is. And we do a lot of work so that individuals and that the components that they're rated on are appropriate for their job. There's some items in the rating review process that are more relational based. If someone is naturally not a relationship builder, we feel that they shouldn't be overly penalized if they're not, super outgoing in the workplace. We wouldn't expect that. So it all really is built around someone's natural strengths and the traits that they have in the workplace. So it's quite a cool process. If you're interested in the 360, just reach out to Lisa or anybody else in the team. Lisa's the one that's manning the chat, and we'd be happy to reach out to you. Let me just check the questions just one more time. We've gotten a lot of really good ones. What is the ethical concerns with this knowledge? My assumption is that it can be used for a lot of good, but there is some dangerous stuff as well. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So from a DNA behavior perspective, we don't know anybody's name. So as far as like DNA behavior, having all of the insights and knowledge on the 200 behavioral insights, DNA behavior doesn't know anything about any of the clients. We don't need to know their names. We don't need to know their email addresses. We don't know their IP addresses or anything like that. So it's up to the company in order to build these experiences. Also, everybody that uses our platform, they have to demonstrate the fact that they're using this to improve the client experience for the client. If they're using it for anything above and beyond that, they will not be able to use the platform. It's all about being able to customize the experience for the client, making things easier and a better overall customer experience.
And I'll add to that, Ryan, just a bit, because I think that always with privacy, it's important to note one of the things in this digital age that, people project that, with the ability to own your own data, it's quite important. It'll probably evolve to that. For somebody to really understand themselves is critical. And our CEO started the company based on that premise that if an individual understands how they're wired, how they're actually their strengths, it can't be used against them. That's really what we advocate. If you really do understand that, you can actually work in that strength and nobody will be able to manipulate you. That's really the intention. But this really is that's why we stress it's so important to really understand as your client goes through the process that it's a real learning around their strengths, around their natural instinctive strengths. Okay, thanks.
So we'll now move along, and then you'll see another element that we've intentionally included into here as far as how we market and how we offer this to you guys. So this is our 5th webinar that we've had in this API series. So we do have attendees data that we can get, just directly from Zoom, the solution that we use to host these webinars. And we know that there's some attendees that have come, time after time. That is why on the 3rd webinar, we launched a new thing called the 15-minute open office hours. So because we have a lot of attendees that are coming time after time, we love that. But we also know that there's a lot of people that are a little bit more reflective and are really trying to get as much information as they possibly can about our solution. So one way that we've shortcutted that is we've opened up this 15-minute open office hour. So we will provide this link to you in the chat, and also Lisa will follow up that with an email for you all. And you literally can just click in there, and then you can schedule a direct call with us where we can solve any specific challenge that you have, on an offline basis. So yeah, it's just a 15-minute, and it will allow you to drive the call, and we can talk about some of the challenges that you may have and what types of things that you are trying to solve.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I know we went a little over on our time today, But great questions. We really appreciate your participation. Again, we will send the recording and the presentation. Lisa will be following up. And we do welcome feedback, so please complete the survey that'll be dispatched. And we really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on our next webinar. Thank you so much.